happens when your car won't start? And most likely it's been sitting and you could have bad fuel. But how do you figure that out, and how do you clean it up? If you watch the commercials for some of the stabilizer products, they talk about costly repair bills if you don't use the product. Now, I'm not saying not to use it. I use it when I can. But let's say, for example, this car, last year, the fuel pump was in disrepair, and the carburetor needed to be rebuilt. And so the car, as of summer of 2023, had gas in it. Anyway, I rebuilt the carburetor, replaced the fuel pump, got the car running, and then I parked it for the winter. And when I got it in it this year to start it, the first time I moved it over here, it was running really rough. And that was a couple months ago. And it kind of disappointed me because all the work I'd done on it, so I just kind of left it. But I knew I'd come back to it. I came back to it, it wouldn't start at all. So in my mind, I'm thinking this gas could have been in there from 2022, maybe even 2021. Now, I use only premium no ethanol. And generally I put some kind of treatment in it, but I'm not sure about this. So anyway, so cranked, nothing happened. So what do you do? So for me, step one, I want to see if it's getting gas. And so when you look inside the primary barrels and you pump the accelerator, is it getting anything from the accelerator pump? And you can see, hopefully you can see, that nothing is coming out. So step one, I'm not getting any fuel. And I know this carburetor is brand new, so obviously there's a problem. So to me, step two was, okay, am I getting ignition? So I took some handy dandy starter fluid, don't like to use a lot, hit it with a little bit, turned the key, and it fired. So that tells me I've got ignition, but I'm not getting fuel. So question, is there something wrong in the back end of the carburetor, in the reservoir, or the float, or the starter pump? So this particular tube, you can take some fresh gas, and I have it in a spray bottle, and you can put it in that tube and fill up the reservoir. Okay, so once I put some gas in the float, I gotta try to manage if I now try to hit the accelerator pump, see that? There's gas. Okay, so since we got fuel out of the starter pump, I mean, obviously the starter pump is working and the jets are working. Doesn't tell me that the float and the bowl are clean, but given that this is brand new carburetor, I doubt that that little bit of fuel had that much of an impact. So what we got to determine next is, why isn't fuel getting into the float? And for that, you have a fuel filter right here in this connection. I'll skip to an earlier video where I have it apart, and we'll take it from there. In here is a fuel filter in line, and they're either a copper mesh or a copper or center mesh filter or paper. I'd prefer the copper mesh center. And when I looked at that, it had a glaze on it. So that kind of got me a little worried that maybe it was the filter. Then the next step is to see if the fuel pump's working. So I'll put a little towel around that and I'll crank it. Well, you notice now, hey, it starts. Why is that? Well, it's not because it's getting fuel from the fuel line, but you can see here, this rag is soaked. So the fuel pump is working. What is actually happening is the gas that I put in the reservoir is feeding the engine and the carburetor, so it actually started and run. So that's a very good sign, obviously. So now what do? We had most likely a clogged fuel filter, which to me would indicate potentially bad gas. And this car, fortunately, is pretty easy, other than locking gas cap. Now, I have to admit that I have already done this work. So I looked down in there and the gas was, I would say, a touch cloudy. People say if it's old gas, you could smell varnish. I guess my nose isn't good enough. I need to get my wife out here. I could not smell the varnish, but I could see the gas may have been a little cloudy. And actually there was a little bit of red residue floating around in the gas. I noticed it as I was sucking it out. So what did I do? I kind of gave you a hint there. This particular car, I have a gas pump here, electric, which can be dropped into the tank and it can suck the gas out into a can, which I did. Then, as far as the residue, this is a compressed air driven extractor. And so I put this down in the pump and I actually was able to see and suck out all the red residue that I had in there. And then I put fresh gas back in it. So that's where we are here now. And the next thing I did was, as you can see, left it open, and while I did a test to see if the fuel pump was working, once I got the tank completely empty, there was still fuel in the line, so I cranked it enough to allow the fuel pump to run all that gas out of the lines, and so it should be clear. Now all I got to do is wait for Amazon to deliver the filter tomorrow and reinstall it back into here. I'd recommend, again, the center filters, and based on what it just did in the having gas in the reservoir starting, I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna have a running car by tomorrow. So we'll finish it up. I've got the filter. These were actually made by Holly, and I'm not aware that Holly has that type of filter, but anyway, it fits in here. There's a washer that goes, it's kind of, I think it's a nylon washer that goes around here to seal it. There's a spring on the other side. All right, so now that it's all back together, let's see what we got. With this car, I mentioned that it was easy because of the access to the tank, be able to get the gas out and to get any sediment out. The pump that I showed, or a regular siphon hose, would work for most other cars. And if you can't get to the sediment that I would just recommend draining as much fuel as you could out of the tank, and then adding at least 5 gallons of fresh fuel, running the fuel through the pump to clear out the lines, and then go from there. So anyway, I hope this has helped. It's not an overwhelming job if you have that problem. When you start getting into fuel injectors and some of the modern cars, yes, it's going to be a little bit more problematic, but a Chevy big block or a Chevy 350 V8 with a Rochester carbs or Holly carbs, old-fashioned stuff, pretty easy to deal with. So thanks for joining me today at American Dream Garage.